Okay, let's talk a little bit about sovereignty. If anybody's been involved, sort of the ANACAP or anarcho-capitalist rhetoric of about 5 years ago, some of this might sound familiar. There's some overlap in terms. What is sovereignty? So quite often people will say the state is nothing but a mechanism of coercion. Well, sovereignty is to not be beholden to anybody else's will. It's a form of autonomy. But it's a form of autonomy in which it's ensured. So if you have a group of people that band together and they take over a territory, and they're able to maintain defense of that territory, which is to say that they've created a monopoly of violence within that territory, they become sovereign. So the one thing that you can equivocate sovereignty to is the ability to maintain, and it's not really a monopoly, it's a supremacy of violence within an area. So let's say me and my buddies go over the hill, we raid a village, we take it over, we beat out all the competitors in the area. We're the strongest, nobody can push us back. We've established a supremacy on violence within the area. Now that means that we have no challengers. We've beat them back. It doesn't mean that people won't challenge. It just means that there's no successful competitors. And we've done that by creating this monopoly on violence, or the supremacy of violence. Once you have that violence in hand, you can do anything you want with it. You can keep raiding other people and push that territory further out. You can take the people within that territory and enslave them, turn them into slaves, or you can just kill them all, genocide. Or you can use that violence to force people to be productive, which is, I guess, some people would consider that a degree of subjugation. So you can think of first that sovereignty is establishing a supremacy of violence against outsiders. And once you've established that, you can now use that violence to maintain peace or remove competition on non-preferable competition within that region. This is a carryover from military protecting a border to law enforcement, which constrains people's behavior to something that's productive. And once you've done that, you create your sovereignty, and now you can profit from it. You can just tax people, get them productive, use your means of force to maintain their productivity, and then just scrape wealth off the top of it. That's all very viable, and that's all de facto. That's possible. And it's not a delegitimate form of sovereignty. But let's look at what's happening. I said earlier that sovereignty is ensuring autonomy. So we consider for a moment, if instead of you being the invader, you're a defender, what are you defending? Somebody comes in to take over the area and then force you to be productive or tell you what to do. What are you defending against them? You're defending autonomy, self-determination. So if you get enough people together and you successfully defend against that invader, what you've done is you've created a supremacy of violence over the territory. You've beat off that competitor. You've beat them back. And in doing so, you've created a supremacy on violence to maintain and restore autonomy. So autonomy now becomes a little bit like a property. You've invested in that property through creating a supremacy of violence, and that supremacy of violence has allowed you to ensure or keep within your possession, if you want to go back to the property video, keep in your possession the autonomy over that region. Okay, so you establish that, and not everybody within your region has fought for that. Some have, some haven't. And the body that obtains the violence within that group, as I said before, you can use it to enslave, to genocide, or to subjugate to some degree. Well, if your sovereignty has been an investment in securing or ensuring autonomy, you can use that violence to extend the benefits of sovereignty, the extend benefits of autonomy to those within the realm that have not contributed to the supremacy of violence. So this is what we commonly call liberty. Liberty is the benefits of establishing sovereignty. And once you're given that liberty, which is essentially to say that you're autonomous with by the means of a third person who is ensuring that autonomy for you. So it's autonomy that is not self-contained. It's a third party that affords you the benefits of autonomy within that realm. So we call it liberty. And it means that it's limited. Your liberty is only as long as the sovereign grants it and that the sovereign is in place to ensure it. Well, if you took that liberty and used it to predate or parasite or erode the trust commons within that realm, then you are undermining the very means in which your liberty is secured. So one of the things that the supremacy of force is used for is then constraining behavior to cooperation only. So that supremacy of violence is now used to ensure trust commons. And that if you're going to betray trust commons, we're going to lock you up in a cage or we're going to banish you. So it becomes a third party insurer of trust commons. And your agreement to behave trustworthy and to not break those rules is to accept a limitation upon your liberty. So you're giving up some of the autonomy that's been granted to you by those sovereigns on the agreement that you won't use that liberty to undermine the trust and cooperation within the society, or essentially to not undermine the community. This is what we call freedom. You are free within the domain. So freedom ends up being an accepted restriction on one's liberty to maintain the conditions that allow for insurance of the autonomy, not only of the group, but of the individual. So now we have a feedback loop where you have one body within the society that ensures autonomy through gathering up enough violence to eliminate violence within the realm, which then turns around and says, we're going to use this violence to make sure that people only cooperate. And then the people within there gain the benefits of autonomy in exchange for productive behavior, which we then call freedom. So really what we're describing here, we're describing a transmutation of autonomy through different states along the spectrum. You have unchallenged autonomy, which means nobody's come in and infringed upon it, but it's uninsured, it's precarious, and it only lasts as long as there's nobody there to compete against you. So when that competitor rises, you find a means. So in this sense, you can think about autonomy as a possession. And to maintain autonomy within your possession, you need to defend against those that would take it. So that's the supremacy of violence. And when you're successful at that, you become sovereign. And when you're sovereign, you can then extend the benefits of autonomy, so limited autonomy. So now we've gone from autonomy basic to autonomy insured into autonomy with accepted restrictions, which is then liberty. And then on the agreement that you'll behave in such a means that doesn't undermine that which ensures your autonomy, which is then freedom. Okay, so autonomy is a property that we invest in. Sovereignty is the insurance and protection of that property. We can extend that property into social means through liberty and law. And that in all of these cases, what we've done when we've acquired a supremacy of violence, we've provided ourselves the means of ensuring a trust property. So our autonomy property then is converted to or extended into creating trustful conditions that are ensured by the sovereign. And then those within that realm exchange their productivity and their good behavior to help maintain those two properties, the autonomy property and the trust property. The trust property making it all possible. So when we say get upset that there are wars in the world, think of it this way, that where there's a boundary, you've created a border to say that within this region we're going to live this way, and we're ensuring it with the military. So that within that context, without a military, without the means of ensuring autonomy, nothing else is possible within a society. We can't coexist together unless we have a means of ensuring trust and cooperation within our borders. And when trust breaks down to its most base level, it devolves into conflict, and then specifically physical conflict. So establishing a supremacy on violence is putting up a bulwark or a wall against the use of physical conflict within the border. So what you're doing is you're ensuring trustful conditions. And then extending it back inward towards those people, you're ensuring that those trustful conditions are maintained, from which then we can all benefit. Okay, that's sovereignty as 4 different states of autonomy, that being autonomy proper, sovereignty, liberty, freedom, and how freedom and liberty are actually possible.